Hey, when you and your buddies are looking for a place to watch baseball this season, how about Long Neck Sports Grill? Each location has 4K TVs all over the place, so you'll never miss a pitch. The menu is so extensive that you can get something different every time you visit, and no place in Northern Kentucky has a better beer selection. There are locations in Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood, and when the weather is warm, there's nothing better than a spring night on Long Neck's outdoor patio. This baseball season, Long Neck Sports Grill. Stay late. Come often. We do call Nick Early Dr. Nick Early because he's earned it. He's with OrthoCincy. We talk injuries every Wednesday with one of the experts from OrthoCincy. Great thing about OrthoCincy is they've got specialists and locations all over the tri-state, and they also offer walk-in orthopedic urgent care during the week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and on Saturday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can learn more at orthocincy.com. That's OrthoCincy.com. Dr. Early is with us. I want to begin by talking about Amarius Mims. So he played and he started 8 games for the Georgia Bulldogs. Last season was interrupted because of an ankle injury that required tightrope surgery. What sort of injury requires this sort of procedure?
So when you think about the ankle, it's kind of a fairly complex joint, and there's your 2 bones that go down your leg. Okay, so you got your shin bone and the little bone on the outside. And there's a bunch of ligaments that kind of help to hold those bones together down by your ankle that are kind of part of all the ligaments that hold your ankle together down further. So when you have a sprain to your ankle, when you roll your ankle over or it gets twisted in a certain way, you can injure, a bunch of the combination of different those ligaments, including those ligaments that kind of hold the 2 bones together. And so that's when you'll hear about like a high ankle sprain. And that could be everything from just like a little stretch injury to those ligaments to frankly even, tearing them or having a significant injury. And, a lot of times it can be somewhere in between there. If somebody has a pretty significant high ankle sprain type of injury, sometimes you'll do a surgery where you're actually kind of trying to brace the 2 bones together to allow those ligaments to heal. And so tightrope is one piece of equipment that is utilized. That's a name from one of the companies, and there's some other products that are similar that are available. So there's a bunch of different names that it can go by, where you're basically connecting between the 2 bones with something that allows for like a dynamic stabilization, allow that to heal. So really what you're trying to do is almost brace the ankle internally such that it can heal properly.
With any player that any team is going to draft, the medical history is something that obviously gets a lot of scrutiny. Should this sort of injury and the procedure involved, should this be concerning when we talk about long-term prognosis and his susceptibility to a similar type of injury?
That's a good question. I think that there's been a lot of evolution in terms of treating these injuries, and people have gotten almost more aggressive with it to try to prevent those secondary injuries. And so some ways, I think you have the type of injury, you get treated, and maybe your likelihood of a secondary injury is probably lower than if you didn't have the surgery, if you're, kind of susceptible to it. There's always concerns anytime you've had an injury to any body part that is it going to be, a liability. And certainly compared to somebody who's never had an injury, that is a concern. But there's been a lot of examples of players being able to return without any issue, with their ankles after this type of procedure and injury. So the hope would be that it wouldn't be something that would hamper him long term.
Bengals also took a tight end, a local product from Fairfield High School, who started his college career at Michigan. Last season played at Iowa, but that season was cut short because of an ACL tear. The injury was suffered in October, and so the original prognosis was he should be okay for the start of training camp, which is obviously late July, and then should certainly be good to go for the start of the season in early September. Kind of walk me through his recovery with an ACL tear, maybe compared to other sort of knee injuries.
Yeah, so ACL injuries are some of the more significant in terms of recovery time, and the reason being is because you always need surgery pretty much for an ACL injury, and so with that, basically your body has to heal and allow that ligament to heal that you're usually reconstructing. And then after that's healed, which takes a few months, your strength has to return and your ability to protect your knee. And that's where it takes so long. And oftentimes it does take, 9 months plus to get back to that point. There are some circumstances where elite athletes have come back even faster than that. certainly with, all the time, really work with their rehab professionals and, working with the staff to kind of get themselves back in the shape they need to be. There's a good chance that he'll be ready, by training camp and be 100%. But it is a pretty intense rehab. People are doing physical therapy pretty much, every day doing something to try to get back to that point. And it's not just the ACL. If there's other associated injuries, it can slow things down a little bit sometime. But you see, an injury where that can happen. If it happens in the mid-fall, late fall, then hopefully he would be okay to go.
So unfortunately for this young man, this ACL injury wasn't the first example of an injury that ended his season, because when he was at Michigan in 2022, he had surgery for a herniated disc. And the surgery has been referred to as life-changing. Obviously, he did come back and play the following season. But can you walk me through the short-term and long-term risks after herniated disc surgery?
Yeah, so usually in a young, healthy, fit person, if they have a disc herniation, it's kind of one of those freak things where something's happened, and then if there's a nerve that's being pushed on, a lot of times you're doing a surgery to decompress that nerve. And once you decompress that nerve, it feels much better. And it can be like immediate. Like sometimes people can wake up from surgery and they're just immediately feeling like, oh my gosh, I feel a million times better. And if that's the case, that's great, and you can make a great recovery. And then it becomes, a lot of times more about the long term in terms of your back. And that's what varies quite a bit. It kind of depends on if you had a herniated disc, how big is that, that piece that herniated, how big is the piece of the disc that was injured? Are there any other risk factors, that are playing into somebody having, further back issues? Oftentimes, like I said, in a young, healthy person, they're going to make a good recovery and be able to get back to full activities. And the hope would be it wouldn't really, cause any, short-term issues at all. When you start looking at the risk for something like that, it's usually more of a long-term, years-long thing where you might get some adjacent problems with your back.
Dr. Nick Early from OrthoCincy is with us. I want to ask you about Christian Encarnacion-Strand because this is interesting to me. So in the game last Saturday in Arlington, he gets hit on the left hand by a pitch. And the good news is X-rays revealed no fracture from the being hit by the pitch. But the imaging did reveal evidence of a previous hand fracture that they believe could have been contributing to the soreness. Now, I've broken my hand before. I knew that I broke my hand the minute that I broke it. How does a hand fracture, a previous hand fracture, go unnoticed?
Yeah, good question. So there's a couple different types of breaks that you could have. You could have a small little piece that's kind of chipped off that could be associated with some of the soft tissues in your hand. You could have a little hairline crack that you didn't really know was there because it wasn't like really moved or anything like that. And so there wasn't like obvious that it was broken and just hurt for a while. And then after, a couple of weeks, it starts to heal up pretty well. And you can see evidence of that sometimes on x-rays where it looks like something, has happened in the past. And, a lot of times that can be associated, with other types of injuries. Like I said, maybe if you have an injury where you have like an injury to one of the joints in the hand, you could have a little piece of bone that was pulled off with it, and that could be evidence of an old fracture. And, there's a couple other different ways that things can show up, and you may have missed it. And it doesn't always mean that something would have been treated differently initially. So it's not necessarily like, oh, we should have had surgery before or something like that. In fact, the vast majority of injuries like that are treated without surgery, and so it wouldn't have really changed anything. But it's something to keep an eye on. Hopefully, it won't be related at all to what's going on. And once his hand's feeling better after, this recent contusion where he got, hit, he'll be feeling much better. I did see that he was, taking batting practice already, so that's a really good sign.
Yeah, it took some fielding practice as well. Dr. Nick Early from OrthoCincy. Expertise is always appreciated, man. I do thank you for your time. We'll do it again soon.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Nick Early from OrthoCincy. I say this every single week because I mean it. The great thing about the people at OrthoCincy is they have specialists and locations all across the tri-state, including walk-in orthopedic urgent care weekdays 9A to 9P, Saturdays 9A to 1P in Edgewood and Eastgate. At OrthoCincy, you never need an appointment. It's easier, and it goes without saying, cheaper than going to an ER whenever you have an urgent orthopedic injury. Go to OrthoCincy.com. That's OrthoCincy.com. This baseball season, catch every pitch at Long Neck Sports Grill. Each location has 4K TVs, so you never miss a game. The menu is so extensive, you can get something different every time you visit. I love the wings, and no place in Northern Kentucky has a better beer selection. Locations in Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood, and when the weather is warm, there's nothing better than a warm spring night on Long Neck's outdoor patio. Long Neck Sports Grill, this baseball season, stay late, come often.